for the university. So, well, actually, it was a split position. I worked for both the math department and the graphic design department, and I managed all of their labs. And one of the reasons they hired me was not only did I have some computer experience, but I also had experience with the software they were using. And so I knew how does Photoshop work, what are the, how does Illustrator work, how does, Pro Tools work, how do video editor suites, what are the concerns with running that kind of stuff. And while doing that job, my wife at the time was not working because we had had our first son. And her first job out of school, she is also a theater person, she's a costume designer. She had worked in Monroe at ULM, which wasn't ULM when she got there, but it was ULM when she left. So she was there during that transition. She decided she wanted to go full-time again, and so she called down to her old boss, her old department head, and said, hey, I'm going to go full-time again, can I use you as a reference on my resume? And he said, well, sure, but I've got a position available if you can get your stuff here by the end of the week. And so I said, so she asked me, she's like, should I do this? And I'm like, well, the worst thing they'll do is offer you a job, and they did. And so he at the time had moved from ULM to here, and so the job was here. So my wife's the costume designer over the theater department, all of you who are going to watch the gala this week. But anyway, when I got back here, I dithered around in the theater and stuff, and they had started a project in information technology services, actually it was IS at the time, to revamp all the websites. And so I was pulled in on that process because I was a person of technical nature. And when they found out about me over there and saw some of the stuff I was already doing with virtualization, because they hadn't virtualized the data center yet and that, and some of my experience with web apps, they hired me on as a web application developer. And so you guys probably haven't been here quite long enough to remember the websites all moving over to Silverstripe and going to their current incarnations now. But I developed a lot of that software. All the plugins that they used and things like that. When we implemented Moodle, I recoded a lot of plugins for Moodle to make Moodle talk to our backend systems, do all that integration. And then after a while, the system administration job came up, and back in the day, when I started as a web application developer, most of the system administrators at the time were only doing Windows administration. But all the new web stuff, Moodle and the websites and things like that, we were deploying on Linux. And I was actually building the virtual machines that were running that and configuring them and working with the network team and all of that. And so when the system administration position came available, I was kind of a good fit for that, to move up into that position. So that's the thing about kind of the support and technology side of IT type jobs. Nowadays there are degrees that kind of focus on that, but that's really new. That's been just within a few years actually. And so there's a lot of people from different places that all kind of coalesce into these types of jobs, right? So once again, it's not really what is your degree or, where did you go to school? It's how do you learn? How do you work? Can you get something done? Can you support people? Can you take a phone call from someone for the 9th time without yelling at them? Things like that.
He's not kidding.
Yeah. So I guess, was that the part of the meandering?
Yeah.
I think I went a little more in depth than I went last time, but that's how we end up here, and that's how I end up where I am. So, more questions? Come on. Yes.
As far as security, you're the only person that they can talk to for security, or you don't have...
It depends on what level of security you're talking about. If it's a network security problem, then the network engineer works on that. If it's a system security issue, then I'm typically the person that ends up at. But that's a surprisingly complicated question, right? Because when you talk about security, it can be something as simple as, do I have a secure enough password, or did someone steal my coursework or something like that? That's probably not going to get to me, because there's a lot of social aspect of that and things like that too. That's another thing you see. You see all this stuff on TVs and movies about people hacking into things. Oh, I'm going to get through the firewall. I'm in there. And that does occasionally happen. But most of the time data is stolen. It's social engineering, right? Someone puts on a uniform and walks into an office that doesn't belong there, and they start flipping over keyboards looking for passwords. right? Or they're dressed up as a UPS guy with a package, they go in, they just start stealing phones, stuff like that. You have people, walk in and smooth talk the secretary, get passed on, things like that. Talking to somebody, convincing them, or figuring out how to get their, figuring out how to figure out their password. There was the big, who remembers the Fappening a couple of years back, when all those celebrities' nude photos were leaked, and everybody complained about iCloud security? It had nothing to do with iCloud security. That was all theater. What happened was a group of people got together and went to all these celebrities, and they found ways to figure out what their passwords were, right? And the one thing that they did that was technically potentially an issue with iCloud security was when you were trying to do a backup, it would let you try to authenticate more times than normal before locking you out. And so they would go, okay, Paris Hilton, we know her dog's name is, what's her dog's name, Twinkie or Twinkle or whatever. And so they would, start building passwords based on that, and they would find out, because it's kind of easy to find out someone's email address, even if it's not published, between guessing and hitting and things like that. And so 90% of the people whose stuff was sold, had they turned on two-factor authentication on their accounts, would have never had their stuff stolen. But they don't want to tell you that. The person who had their stuff stolen, Paris Hilton doesn't want to tell you that. Well, I didn't want to turn on this on my account, and so it's kind of my own fault. And I tell everybody my dog's name and what my date of birth is, and this is my favorite restaurant. And, I put all that on Twitter. They don't want it to be their fault, so they have to blame somebody for it. That being said, those of you who don't know what two-factor authentication is, especially if you use iCloud services, look it up, turn it on. It will save you from that sort of hassle. And it's a very slight hassle to have to deal with it. Basically, with two-factor authentication, when you have a new device, let's say you get a new iPad, right? When you log into your iCloud account, all your other devices go bling, and they say, hey, someone's logging into your account, and it shows a map from this location. Do you want to allow it or not? If you say allow, it puts a little code on the screen. You have to then type into the new device before it'll activate. Rather than just username and password, and then if you lock yourself out, you have 5 security questions. That kind of thing is going away. And all of the big services, Google supports it, Apple supports it, Microsoft supports it.
My bank supports it.
What's that?
Banks. You're seeing
Banks
that a
are starting
lot,
to
for
support
sure.
it. I will go on record saying some of the people with the poorest end user security policies are banks. It is frightening. It is frightening. So when it comes to security, passwords are a big deal. The more characters you have and the more complex, the better, right? Well, one way you can make it complex is use uppercase and lowercase. Most banks, when you type a username and password into that form on their website, the first thing they do is they change it to all lowercase. So there are 5 confirmed major United States banks that do that. They don't use upper and lowercase in their passwords. It's not, you can put it in when you type it in, but it ignores it. Terrible, terrible security practices from banks. It's shocking. It's really shocking. But yeah. Any other questions? Now that I've horrified you with the United States banking system. The whole chip card thing's another example. Those of you with credit cards who've got new ones with the chips on them, everywhere else in the world, if you have a card with a chip, you also have to put in a PIN. Well, they didn't want to implement that in the United States because they thought the consumers wouldn't like it. So they removed one of the major security elements of the concept just because they didn't want to implement it. But everywhere else worldwide, it's been done.
Oh, I still have to put a pin in my credit card. When I put
Some banks will let you do it,
yeah.
but by default, a lot of banks don't do it. It's just chip and signature. That also being said, those of you with mobile devices that support mobile pay, use mobile pay. Because it doesn't use your actual credit card. The bank can rotate your card randomly when they need to on the back end. And the information you send from your mobile device through the system can only be used for that one transaction.
And then when you pay with the little phone and you
I do it with my watch.
Okay, cool.
Like I said, see the cape?
When I see, I can do it with my watch too then, because,
Apple Watch does it. Most of your Android devices have some type, the iPhones, all the new iPhones, they have the Apple Pay. Now, finding a location that takes it can sometimes be tricky. And the fun thing, especially in small locations like this, some people may have it and not even know it. I went to a pharmacy last night, And they asked how I wanted to pay for a prescription, and I said, well, just ring it up as credit. Turn on my watch and did the thing, and they're like, that's what that thing does. We've never seen that before. We're kind of a little, once we've meandered off a bit from that, but any other questions? Even wacky, crazy mobile questions? You guys probably don't know it, but you can be proud that we have heard this time and time again from other people who come and visit and from Cisco engineers. We have the best wireless network on a campus in Louisiana, so you can all be proud of that. Our network is not in the dorms. The dorms are separate.
Oh, you mean like the speed, or are you talking about
The coverage
security?
and the speed.
Oh, okay.
Here's another little bonus for you guys. A lot of people don't necessarily know this, especially a lot of students don't know this. If you do use iOS devices, Apple devices, laptops, iPads, iPhones, all that stuff, we've implemented caching servers. So when the new updates come out, only one person downloads it, it gets cached on our campus, and everybody else gets it from our servers, and it doesn't have to go out to Apple. Once again, doesn't include the dorms at this time.
Are there any interesting, cool projects in the works as
Well,
far as
video
an
is the big one.
Okay.
We are looking to expand our telepresence and telephony kind of stuff. And so, the faculty and staff eventually will start getting new phones. We actually implemented years ago, and most people just don't know about it because we've been terrible about advertising it. We do have instant messaging on campus. You can download the Jabber app by Cisco, log in with your username and password, and do instant messaging to anybody on campus. And anybody on a newer phone, their status will reflect whether they're in a call or in a WebEx meeting or stuff like that, if they're running Jabber on their computer when they're doing those things. And of course, part of that is like the classroom video stuff. We're expanding those systems and making them more capable. All of you students, you may not know this, but you guys all have a WebEx account. So if you wanted to have online meetings with other people, you can have up to, I think, 5 or 8 participants in a meeting with video and sharing and screen sharing and all that. Just go to nsustudent.webex.com and log in, and boom, there you go.
Go ahead.
Oh no, it's just that for faculty, they just have a larger range of people they can include for their WebEx.
What's that?
For the faculty, they just have a larger range of people they can include
Yes,
for WebEx.
yeah, they have a full, how that works basically is WebEx is like, oh, you've got a campus account? You know what we're going to do for free? We're going to give all your students accounts, but they'll be limited, right? The faculty, we haven't actually rolled this out because we're still finalizing the contract negotiations, but if you're in a room with telepresence, with a telepresence video system, in the near future, all of the faculty will be able to launch a WebEx and then dial that system into their WebEx. So when they teach a class, they can teach it telepresence, and students that don't have telepresence, which is most students. I mean, because telepresence systems are expensive. But they could log in, like, if you were sick, you could log in via WebEx and potentially see that class.
We could have our online students join us at the same time.
And
Yep.
yeah, you can participate, right? Because if you have a webcam and all that.
Would that be counted as attendance?
That's up to you. I would consider it attendance, but that's up to your instructor at that point. And not all instructors are going to support that sort of thing. Just like a student or anybody else, we have instructors that are very strong on technical capabilities like that. We have some that are not so strong and don't utilize that type of technology in that way. But those are two of the big ones. There's been a lot of discussion on updating the portal, but I have no real information on that, to be honest. There's some issues with the portal. We are currently beta testing a new version of the mobile app for the university. So hopefully in the near future that'll be available and we'll be a much better experience than our current one. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, there's always a bunch of stuff. Throughout this year, we've been doing a lot of network upgrades, actually the last 2 years. It used to be all of our buildings were interconnected with 1 gig links, and then on the desktop you had 100 meg. We now have a bunch of buildings that are all 10 gig back to the data center, and you're 1 gig at the desktops. So we've upgraded that. There's always Wi-Fi being replaced and upgraded in different buildings. it flows through different buildings throughout different years as projects. Not this last summer, but the summer before, Kappa got all new Wi-Fi network. This year, we upgraded the core network for the whole university. Next year, we're doing all new firewalls. There's always something. Actually, there's always 9 things. Is really what it is. Those are the things that kind of I can think of off the top of my head. And there's whole other groups that work in ITS on different things that I don't necessarily have a day-by-day visibility into, that they're all working on stuff. And some of it's stuff that you will directly see, and some of it's stuff that more affects the staff and faculty that supports you that you may not directly see, but eventually will lead to a better experience for you. Yes, sir.
What's the simplest thing that's been done that had the greatest impact on how everything ran?
The new storage. Yeah, our old storage, before we went to this new storage, it was and when we bought it, it was awesome, but then we expanded way past its capabilities. And so, depending on how long you have been here, and you guys are all younger, so you may not remember, but the first 2 days of every semester, Moodle used to basically be unresponsive, and the websites would be unresponsive. And we used to go through and do all kinds of stuff on those Linux boxes to try to minimize that and make them as responsive as possible. And when we put the new storage in, we had all these graphs up and think we were watching things in real time that first day of classes, and everything just kept running all day long. And it's just like, wow. and that's a big deal with kind of the stuff that I work with is, you know, when you talk about uptime, you want to have 99 point something uptime. So you have 99.9, 99.99. Every 9 you add at the end makes it 10 times more expensive. Or you need 10 times more performance or 10 times more. So every 9 you add is a big deal. And so, you know, it used to be basically 4 days out of the year, you know, the websites in Moodle wouldn't work. And now they do. And so that's, for us, that's been a huge, and it sounds silly because it's 4 days out of the year, but those are the days that you guys are first checking all your syllabuses, right? And you're getting on for the first time, and you're trying to, maybe fix some registration problems and things like that. And so that's been a big thing. The other thing I would say actually is the Office 365 migration. Before we went to Office 365, all the students were on an older mail system called iMail, and they only had 200 meg mailboxes. And you could only access it through webmail. You couldn't use a mobile device, you couldn't use an email client, anything like that. So when we moved everybody over to Office 365, it opened up mailboxes, and I mean, your mailboxes when we were on iMail were basically unusable. With 200 meg, I mean, that's not a lot of messages. You get messages from Moodle or Blackboard and Instructor, it would fill up really fast. We had a lot of people who just couldn't use their mailbox. First thing they had to go in and do is go in and delete everything before they could do anything in their mailboxes. And so the Office 365 transition was another huge one. And, you know, some of the things like the Wi-Fi, nothing's ever perfect. You know, there's going to be little outages or problems. And of course, we don't really have Wi-Fi between buildings. Sometimes you can pick up the Wi-Fi between buildings, but that's more accidental than on purpose. You know, we target inside the buildings. But go to any academic building on campus, you should have Wi-Fi, and that Wi-Fi should be usable, right? And so that's kind of a big deal, because when I got here back between 2005 and 2008, I mean, that wasn't a thing, you know. If you had a mobile device, you either had a data plan. Remember, data plans back then were terrible. So yeah, I don't know if you agree with those, but well, I would say also honestly, us going to Lonnie, because I think it was around 2008 when we went to Lonnie, and while we've had a few issues in the last year with Lonnie from time to time, we used to have, I don't know, 5 or 6 outages a year before we moved to Lonnie. And then when we moved to Lonnie to January of this year, we had, I think, 1 outage or something like that, maybe 2. And those outages lasted in the minutes rather than hours. And so that was a huge difference. And being able to hit our other campuses at super high speeds and things like that. Any other questions?
It's not a big one, but how often do you all have to travel to talk to other teams, like when you're talking to other IT groups?
As far as throughout the state or internally in our university?
Throughout the state.
That happens a few times a year, and it depends on things. Usually this time of year, the state itself would hold a big conference, but with consolidation of IT at the state level, they didn't decide to do it again this year, so Tech decided to host their own just for the ULS systems. the universities. The one for the state would also include like the health system and, you know, the DMV and all the DOTD, all that kind of stuff. But this was just ULS. And so that happens once or twice a year. Some of our vendors do events. Cisco does an event in May that a bunch of us go to that keeps us up to date on all the new Cisco products, but a bunch of the other university people are there where we can you know, chat and whatnot. And then if we have big projects like when we implemented our new security camera system, we were looking at some options. Well, one of the options was already in use at Monroe. So we scheduled with them to take a trip there for them to show off the system. This is how it works, and this is how we do things. And we actually ended up doing that system because of it. On the flip side, we'll have people find out, oh, you guys have already gone fully to Office 365. Can we do a WebEx, or can we come there and talk to you about how you did it and why you made these choices and how you deal with this? And so, I would say a few times a year.